So I begged him. I was like, this time either let me die or send me to prison because I can't stop on my own. And so I tried to kill myself again, and the same thing happened. My husband revived me. And by this point, I was really upset.
Heroin again?
Yeah. I was really upset. I was really mad. I was really discouraged. I hated my husband. I hated myself. I hated my life. I hated everything. I mean, all I felt was, the only thing that I had inside me left was rage, hopeless rage. I mean, I was a woman with nothing else to live for. 2 days later, I was in the back of a police car. And God answered my prayer. God answered my prayer. I asked him to help me, and he did that. He did that. That wasn't what I was, expecting. Of course, if I had it my way, I would go to some fabulous, fancy place to detox, and then everything would be great after that. But that's not how it works.
How'd you end up in that police car?
Well, the house that we were in got raided because my husband was manufacturing. We were manufacturing meth there. So I got arrested for manufacturing methamphetamine. I got charged with multiple felonies, and I was facing 38 years in prison.
And this is in Kosciuszko County still?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. And so, you know what? I was relieved. It wasn't exactly what I wanted for my life, but I was so relieved that it could finally stop.
You're away from the manufacturing, you're away from the temptation, but you're going to detox now, right?
Yeah, I was going to detox. And so I detoxed. It took me quite a while, but for the first week, I was detoxing really hard. And, you don't get a blanket or a mat. You don't get any Tylenol. And I just remember being really sick, so sick. And my husband, who also got arrested with me, he was all burnt up. He was covered in burns because he caught himself on fire. And we were just a hot mess. We were a hot mess. And the guards weren't too happy with us because the phone system had been shut down because of how many calls they were receiving about our case. And so they
Why is that?
Well, we knew a lot of people. My husband was, dealing drugs. He was the meth cook. So when you're the meth cook, then you're the man on the streets.
And people want to know when they're going to be able to get it again. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of their way of, they're just checking up on your case to know when they can get it again.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, or just, if they knew us, so they wanted to call and find out what happened. It wasn't really, it's not like we had any,
Real friends.
No.
Yeah.
And
are you in separate cells?
Oh, yes, we're in separate cells.
And are you alone detoxing, or are you with other people?
Alone.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. After about a week, a little over a week, they took me to general population. And I knew I was in here for a while. And so I might as well just surrender, It took me a few months to get my head right. And I knew that God answered my prayer, okay? And, blessings are so disguised a lot of times, right?
Yep.
And so to some people, jail, facing 38 years in prison would be the worst thing that ever happened to them. But for me, I knew that it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
It's saving you from yourself at that point.
Yeah. And I just came, I asked my public defender to postpone my case for as long as he could. And he was, I remember he asked me why. Nobody wants to do that. And I was like, you know what? I'm guilty for the things that I'm being accused of. And I want to face my punishment with a humble heart and a clear head. And he was like, okay, don't talk like that around. As your attorney, don't go around saying that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I am guilty. I am guilty. And so my case was postponed for a while. And while I was in jail, God blessed me so much. They had the jail that I was in had this amazing ministry team. Amazing. And, They made sure we had church twice a week. We had Bible study every day, some kind of Bible study available to us every day. There was NA, there was AA, but there was this amazing pastor who started this ministry, and he used to be an inmate there. And so he used his passion that God had given to him, and he was paying, giving back what had been given to him. And so
paying it forward.
Yeah. And so he came up with this really awesome thing where he would pick a few people, a few inmates to be ministry leaders, to other inmates. He taught me that, what, you can still help other people. You can still give back.
You can minister there, right? Mm-hmm. Right where you were.
Yeah. And so while I was there, I'll never forget, I was in my cell and I fell to my knees and I told God, whether I get out ever or if I'm here forever, I promise I will be your good and faithful servant. I will serve you. I will serve you, and I will never forget what you've done for me. He answered my prayer.
Yeah.
He answered my prayer, and he gave me the help that I needed. And so while I was in jail, I rededicated my life to God, and something so amazing happened on sentencing day. Here I am, preparing myself. 38 years is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. So what's the judge do?
So the judge was getting ready to retire. And I remember I wrote him this long letter, this heartfelt letter, and I never asked him to let me out. I wrote him a letter and I apologized for my behavior. I told him that I was remorseful for what I've done and that I was guilty of it. And that I was sick and I really did want help. And so when I went in front of him, he told me, I read your letter and I really like how you owned up to everything. I never heard you once make any excuses. You take full responsibility for what you've done. And he was like, I'm going to do something I rarely do, and I'm going to give you time served today. And I was like, what?
How long had you been in?
Almost. Well, at that point, I had been in for almost 5 months.
Wow.
He was like, I'm going to give you time served. And I was like, and I just knew, I was like, wow, God is working. God's working right now. Because I was fully prepared to go to prison. I prepared myself to go to prison. I knew I deserved it. I knew that I broke the law. And I was a drug offender, and I deserved to pay my debt. I deserved that.
Willing to accept the consequences.
Mm-hmm. And so at that point, he shipped me to Allen County to face my probation violation because I was on probation when all this happened.
And you end up in the criminal division with Judge Wendy Davis.
Yes, Judge Davis. Yeah, that's where I ended up. And I knew, I definitely knew this time I was going to prison because I was on, you can't be on probation and then catch new charges that severe and not go to prison. I mean, so I knew I was preparing myself. I'm going to go to prison, and you'll on a probation violation, I'll probably do a couple years. And so I'll never forget. I went in front of Judge Davis, and I tried telling her right off the bat. I was like, I'm guilty, and I was hoping that she would just send me to prison so I can get my time started. I kept going back in front of her.
How much time's passing in the Allen County Jail? Oh my goodness.
A couple months. So I went in front of her for the last time, and she told me, she was like, Miss Hanlon, I have different plans for you. I'm not sending you to prison. I'm going to send you to a brand new transitional home that just opened here in Fort Wayne. And as a matter of fact, they had opened while I was doing my time in jail. And wow. She told me, she said, I've never sentenced anyone here yet, but you'll be my first. But I know the only thing I know about it is I know the director, Tommy Carden, and I assure you that it'll be a good place. And I just remember I was sitting there in court, and I realized, I'll never forget the time that I was on my knees wailing, like just tears just all over my face, wailing I wanted help, begging my husband not to leave me like in this condition. Couldn't find any rehab, and God just gave it to me. God gave it to me in a courtroom. In a court, I was getting the help I wanted. I remember telling Judge Davis, I was like, Your Honor, you will not see me back here until the day I graduate from Redemption House. And she was like, Miss Hanlon, that's what everybody says. And I'm like,
Wow.
I know. I'll prove it to you. I had no idea what to expect. Here, I was 40 years old. I didn't have any clothes except for what I was arrested in. And because I was so hungry in jail, I had lost all this weight. So the clothes I was arrested in were falling off of me. I had flip-flops on. It's November,
Cold.
November 14th is the day I got out of jail. I walked in Redemption House, and I wasn't sure. I was like, is it going to be like jail?
Yeah.
Is it going to be terrible? Is it going to be, I didn't know what to expect. And I knew as soon as I walked in that as soon as I walked through those doors, I felt God's Spirit. And I knew that was where I was going to start my life over. That was where I was going to change. I started to change in jail, and I did all that, everything I could. I used my time wisely. I used my time very wisely while I was in there. And I did everything that I possibly could to improve my life and my heart. I started working on, I had a clear head. My heart was being renewed. But there's only so much you can do, as far as restoring your life.
Absolutely.
So I surrendered to this program. I surrendered to, I believed that I knew, and I know some people think I'm crazy when I say God loved me so much, he locked me up. But he did. He did love me that much. And so I trusted that, whatever, God, I'm going to let go of everything in my life. I'm going to let go of everybody. And I'm going to start over.
And how long is the program that you graduate from?
6 months.
And that go okay?
Throughout my residency, I started, I just made friendships with, the other residents who were going through the same thing I was, trying to recover their life and trying to, move forward and move out of the life that we were all once in. And, the one thing I love about Redemption House, well, one of the many things I love about Redemption House, it's a program. It's not just a home for people to come live in. It's a program, and
you're going to get better.
And and everything there is faith-based. And so I had all these Bible studies, and it was like just all these classes, every day.
You're almost giddy over it.
I know.
At that time, right?
Yeah. Because it was what I needed. And so through my residency there, I started working. I reached out to my kids, and I'll never forget my middle son, Jonathan. He was the first one to call me back, and I'll never forget what he told me. He was like, "Mom, I'm glad that you're alive, and at least I can sleep good tonight. But I'm just not ready to talk to you. I'm not ready to talk to you."
How'd that make you feel?
Well, I understood because I felt like that with my mom and dad too. And so I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. I knew that restoring my relationship with my kids wasn't going to be easy. But the difference was that I was changing, and I was willing to go through that and work through it. And so I told him, I understand. And you know what? I'm not going to stop trying. I'm not going to stop being your mom. I'm not going to stop trying to recover the damage that I've done. And you know what? My words are empty to you. And one day I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to show you. But I'm not going to quit trying. And it's okay for you to be mad at me. And I want you to tell me that you're mad at me so that, I understand.
Wow.
I resented my mom for a long time. And I loved her, and I resented her too. And same with my dad, and there's this turmoil that goes on inside of you.
So you graduate, what happens?
As my residency was ending, I just was feeling called. I was just led to start working there. I was kind of when I was a resident there, I was kind of I was like the person who encouraged everyone to keep moving forward, and I'd get everybody all pumped up, and we're not going to get high, we're not going to do this. If someone was trying to struggle with that or whatever, and so I just found my passion, and I feel I feel like it's my job as a Christian and as someone in recovery to give back what's been given to me. And you know what? I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if God didn't place people in my life that were also in recovery, because I really didn't know that it was possible to I thought what I was aiming for when I first got there was just to stay clean and get a job. That was my big, huge expectation in life, was to stay clean, get a job, and have a relationship with my kids. But wow, I was really thinking small, because God had some major, big plans for me, way bigger than what I was thinking.
He was offering healing in a ministry.
Yeah. And so I immediately started working there the day after I graduated. I started off as a part-time staff member. And you know what? I'm good at my job. I was good at it. And I loved it. My whole life, I really regretted not getting my degree. And even in my late 20s, when I was starting to get my life together, I thought it was too late to go to college. I thought, I'm 29. I mean, that's and so I just never went. That always bothered me. But I moved in. I got an apartment when I moved out of Redemption House. And for the first time ever in my whole life, I lived alone. The last time I'd lived alone when I was living in, cars and on the streets. But I never actually lived in my own place by myself. I always was either married or had kids. And that was an adjustment. My kids were about 4 hours away in southern Indiana, so it's not like I can go see them. I couldn't leave the county, But you know what? I just knew, you just keep doing your part and God's going to do his. I can't worry about all that stuff right now. I got to just stay focused on what God's asking me to do today, and all the big things fall into place, So I got an apartment, and eventually I had the opportunity to actually be reunited with my kids. I had been working at Redemption House for probably 6 months, and I was, at this point, I completed Hope Probation, and I went in front of Judge Davis the day that I graduated. And you know what? I told her, I was like, Your Honor, thank you so much for the help you've given me. Today, I have a joy in my heart that nobody can take from me.
Right.
Nobody. And you know what? That joy replaced the drugs that ravished me. And for that, I was so grateful. And I'll never forget, she got off the bench and gave me a hug, and she told me how proud she was of me. And,
wow.
So I did it. I completed Hope Probation as well. And here I was, free and clear. At that point, I realized, you know what? I completed this. You have to keep in mind, usually when people that kind of come from the life I came from, I never completed anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of was like, you know what? Maybe I can complete things. Maybe
Your first major accomplishment, and now you want to start other things that you can finish.
Yeah. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go to school and get a degree. And I knew that it was going to take a lot of dedication. When you have to work and balance that out. But I did. I made up my mind, and I was going to do it. I made up my mind. And so I started working. By this time, I was working full-time at Redemption House, and I got promoted to staff coordinator. And I started school, and my advisor told me that I was crazy for starting. I was like, listen, I want to get the hardest class over with. because I'm not going to get almost done and then can't pass a class. So I took quantitative reasoning my first semester
What school?
at Ivy Tech.
Okay.
And, here I hadn't been in school for 25 years, and I just went completely in it,
That does sound crazy.
I know. And, my advisor was like, all due respect, I don't know if you should. And I was like, listen, everything I've been through, I know what I'm doing right now. I know what I want. I know what I'm doing. I have my mind set up, made up. And come to find out, I'm an honor roll student. I get A's. Woo!
on
Yeah.
now.
I know. Who knew? I'm getting straight A's. I get straight A's.
That is awesome.
God restored my heart and my brain. That's for sure.
You become director of operations for Redemption House, but talk about what happens with your mom.
Okay. So, my whole life, not having a mom, it was, I had a mom, but she was in prison, and so I didn't really have a mom. My mom became this amazing mom while she was incarcerated. And she knew that I was struggling really bad with addiction. And when I'm the kind of user that if I love you or I respect you, I just will disappear. You won't know where I'm at. I just will disappear. And so that's what I did. And my mom didn't know if I was alive or not. She put a missing person report out on me while she was incarcerated. And she never had an address for me. And so throughout the last 4 years that I was of my addiction, my mom wrote me at least once a week or twice a week. She wrote me, and then she would just put the letters in an envelope, in a big manila envelope, and for the day that she was able to send them to me if I ever had an address. And so when I got
oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so when I got arrested, I got this big, huge packet. It was this big, manila envelope.
Oh my.
And on the outside it said, Marisa, I know you're probably not happy right now, but I am so glad that I have an address for my daughter, even if it is the county jail.
Wow.
And I remember I opened this up. I opened this manila envelope up, and there were just letters and letters and letters of different dates over the years.
Oh my goodness.
And
did you read them all?
Yeah, but I didn't at first. It was too much for me. I was like, oh my goodness, because I didn't, what had happened to my mom played a big part in where I was at, and that was something that really needed to heal, and I couldn't handle it. I was still coming, still withdrawing a little bit, and it was way too much for me. So I did read them after a couple months of getting them. I kind of looked at the envelope every day, and I was like, oh gosh, I need to read those. But I knew it was gonna just,
So she had she had surrendered her life to Christ in prison. She
Yes.
had become a model citizen. She was investing and ministering to other
Yes.
women. And then she gets released, right?
Yes. California changed all these laws, and all these women were getting out of prison. And my mom was one of them. And she got out right after I'd been working at Redemption House for a few months, and she got out. And she was sentenced to a transitional home, just like I was. And wow, after almost doing 25, she almost did 25 years, and God had this amazing plan for her. She got out, and she just flourished. I mean, it was like she skyrocketed, and she was. Today my mom is the best mom that I could ever ask for. Actually, I got to do something that I never thought I'd be able to do. Growing up, while my kids were growing up, they didn't have a family unit from my side. And last summer I took my kids to meet their grandma, and it was so amazing. I mean, it was like God's restoration was so beautiful because, it was amazing. We got there, and you would think that that they have been in each other's lives forever.
It's like they didn't miss a beat.
No, there was no awkwardness. It was like, Grandma, you know, and everybody's
Wow.
hugging, and it would, and
Wow.
I sat back and I watched, you know, God's restoration.
Yeah.
And I forgave my mom. I truly forgave my mom, and my kids truly had forgiven me.
Wow.
And here we were as a family unit,
Wow.
you know. And yeah, it was powerful. It was powerful.
Forgiveness leads to freedom. Mm-hmm. And the whole purpose of it is for a relationship with God that's fleshed out in a relationship with others. You have one of the most amazing stories of restoration I've ever heard in my life, out of 300 and some episodes. And I just think it's magnificent how God has restored your family relationships, but even more so how God is using you to bring his restoration to others. Thank you for being the ultimate picture of somebody who's on Restoration Road.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. So what about you? Are you going through a valley, a dark valley of addiction? Does something have mastery over you and you need to let it go? Jesus Christ is the only true restorer, because the Bible tells us that he is your designer. He's made you a particular way. He gave you a heart. You have a will, a mind, a spirit. You have emotions. He gave you desires, significance, control, security, contentment. And your search may be right, it's just in the wrong place. Only Christ will satisfy your desires. The more you pursue life apart from him, the more insignificant, out of control, insecure, and discontent you're going to be. But he's here waiting right here, right now, to hear the prayer of a humble and contrite heart. Just say, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I need you now. I know you love me where I am. And he will hear your prayer. He will forgive you of your sin. He will cleanse you from all unrighteousness. And we want you to run to somebody who can disciple you and teach you what the Bible has for you to bring wise choices to your life. Thank you so much for joining us on the Restoration Road.